tea. It can be one of two things to your orchids. Either your orchid's very best friend or your orchid's arch nemesis. And this all depends on what tea it is, how you prepare it, and how you use it. Let's break it down as we go through a variety of the different teas that are most commonly available or that you may most commonly have in your home. We've got black tea, red tea, bush tea or rooibos tea, green tea, chamomile tea, hibiscus tea, and of course a whole range of different herbal teas. In each of these teas, the ingredients are all slightly different, so naturally we're going to have a different nutrient profile in all of them. Also, we're going to have different acidity levels or pHs that are going to affect your orchid. There are also other organic compounds that are in your teas that are both good and bad for your orchid, depending on which teas they are. So let's have a look. We'll go through slowly one by one so we can understand the difference in each of these. Let's start off with that pH that I was talking about. With your black tea, we have a slightly acidic pH, and that will carry through to your green tea as well, because both of them are made from basically the same plant. So they have, not only do they have very similar pH, they'll also have a very similar nutrient profile. The black tea, the only difference is you're going to get more caffeine and a higher tannin count than you will in your green tea. But green tea is still going to give you a strong caffeine and tannin count compared to the other teas. But we'll get into how those make a difference later. Your red tea is basically neutral. It basically has a pH of around 6 or 7, so it's going to be considered a neutral pH. Chamomile tea has got a slightly alkaline pH. So there you're looking at anything over about a pH of 7. Hibiscus tea, on the other hand, is extremely acidic. This is one of the reasons why things like hibiscus tea we prefer not to use on orchids at all. It's got a very high acidity level. It's got a pH of around 2 or 3. It's going to really affect the pH in your media as you're pouring it on, as well as the pH of the water that you're adding to it. So this may make your media and that water too acidic so that any nutrients that are available in it aren't available to your plant. Also, this hibiscus tea is extremely low in any of those trace elements. So it's actually not worth putting on your orchids at all, although it is high in antioxidants and things like that. But also the use of it is going to stain the roots of your orchid and your pots and any surface that you pour it on, which actually makes it more difficult to diagnose any problems in your roots or your plant if you're using this hibiscus tea on them. So we'll just rule hibiscus tea right out of the mix, right from the starting blocks. So with this sort of pH range to these teas, having hard water, meaning that you have a high quantity of dissolved solids in your water, such as calcium and magnesium, gives you an alkaline water. This alkalinity can be ameliorated using either your black tea or your green tea, which has got that slight acidity to it, which will help bring down the pH of that water. Adding red tea is really not going to make any difference because all you're doing is adding a neutral into your alkalinity, so it's not really going to change that much. But adding something like your chamomile tea, which is also alkaline, is going to increase the alkalinity of your water, which means you really don't want to use chamomile tea with hard water. And what about the nutrient profiles that these different teas are going to offer your orchids? Black tea, for one, other than having things like nitrogen and just about most of the other micronutrients, you are going to get a decent amount of manganese and iron, with trace amounts of zinc and of course those other micronutrients. And then, as I said, you're also going to be getting tannins, which are good for your orchids, but they can also be a problem if you're getting them in too high concentrations. That's also why with all of these teas, we only use our second draws. The first draw always you can enjoy yourself, and then the second draw you can use to feed your orchids with. The first draw is going to draw out the majority of the tannins and caffeine, because caffeine is not something that we really want to feed our orchids. If you want to know more on that caffeine, we'll put the link to our previous tea video in the description box down below, so you can get that more detailed information there. Because too many tannins and caffeine is going to inhibit the growth of your orchid. And with the green tea, you're going to be getting decent amounts of copper, magnesium, phosphorus, manganese, zinc, and of course those trace amounts of molybdenum. And that's the wonderful thing about green tea, is that it's quite high in those micronutrients, along with being slightly less tannins than what your black tea has, as well as a slightly lower caffeine concentration. So that all adds up to a good tonic for your orchids. With red tea, rooibos tea, bush tea, whatever you want to call it, not only does this have copper, zinc, phosphorus, magnesium, manganese, and a lot of those other micronutrients, but it also has antioxidants. And these antioxidants are really helpful for the growth of your orchids. Also, red tea has no caffeine and is very low in tannins. So none of that's going to be a problem to your orchids if you're adding this to your fertilizer mix. With your chamomile tea, as I said, that's slightly alkaline, so don't put it with hard water again. You're going to be getting phosphorus, calcium, potassium, and trace amounts of boron, which your plant actually really only needs in small amounts anyway. And also with the chamomile tea, all of those organic compounds that we take chamomile tea for to help reduce inflammation, and that also help your orchid in a very similar way. What they do is they reduce the stress reactions in your orchid to help it overcome any of those stressful situations that they are put under. And of course, we've ruled hibiscus tea out, but also another very common tea that's used quite often, especially for orchids and for the human condition, is nettle tea. Nettle tea is actually really an amazing tonic for orchids. But again, don't use the first draw, use the second draw, because nettle is extremely high in just about all of those micronutrients. So you're going to be giving your plant a really big boost. And there are some of those organic compounds in nettle that are immediately absorbable by the leaves. So if you're spraying that on, you're helping your plant almost immediately through those organic compounds. And they also help with the absorption of the other micronutrients that you are feeding your plant with that nettle tea. And when it comes to all your fancy herbal teas that you may have, then you may want to be slightly more careful. Although things like these can be good for your orchids, we're never sure exactly how the ingredients have been treated. So if you are wanting to use them, ensure that they are 100% organic. We don't want any preservatives or other chemicals that we're not sure how they're going to affect our orchid. So again, these teas, something like a mint tea, can be really good for your orchid, but it's not going to give you terribly many micronutrients for your plant, but it can be slightly antifungal. If you've got small doses of mint tea left over after you've drunk your tea, then you can use it very occasionally to help prevent fungus on your plants, but don't go overusing it, because those mint oils can start causing problems. And not only that, an overdose of them is going to kill all the mycorrhizal fungi in and around your plant as well. So we want to keep mint teas to a minimum if you can. Things like ginger, gangala, and turmeric teas can actually be really good for your plant. It's going to help be antimicrobial, it's going to help antifungal, it's also going to help produce new roots in your orchids. But again, it's not something you want to be using all the time. Any of these tea products, remember, can build up excess organic compounds in your media, which can then again cause an overgrowth of all the bad bacteria and fungus that you don't want. So what is going to be the best tea to use for your orchids? And how do we go about using these teas? Well, the best tea for your orchid is probably going to be the red tea, the rooibos tea. That's if you're going to be using it regularly. The green tea and the black tea have both got those tannins in them, which can be helpful to your orchid in small quantities. So these you're going to want to use far less frequently as that extra little boost for your plant. Chamomile tea is also a nice ingredient to use if you're wanting to use it more frequently. But remember, you've got to be aware of the alkalinity of your chamomile tea. Your other herbal teas, you may only want to use very infrequently because you're not always sure how your orchid is going to react to overdoses of them. And what sort of quantity of tea are we looking at to feed our orchids? With these second draws, if you're going to be foliar feeding or spraying in and around the roots, you can actually use these as they are. You can just pour them into a spray bottle and give it a spray in and around your plant. If you're adding them to other nutrient solutions or fertilizers, then you want to use approximately 30 mils per liter of water. And remember, these teas are in no way a replacement for orchid food. They're just adding in those extra micronutrients that your feed may be lacking. You're also giving it the bonus of those other organic compounds that your orchids do enjoy. And now for those big warnings. Remember, flavored teas are a big no-no. You don't want any flavored teas, sweetened teas, or any of those teas with milk products in them already. Even if some of those teas are flavored with citrus rind, you still don't want to use those because those teas that are produced may be a little bit too oily for your orchid. Those citrus oils may clog up the pores and cause problems. So rather stay away from the flavored teas. If you're looking on how to use lemon, we've also got a video on that, and we'll drop the link to that video in the description box down below too. Also remember, Ed posts up a lot of content on that Buy Me a Coffee link that's available for everyone to view. There is some members only content, so don't be shy. Sign up, become a member, and grow like a pro. And if you find any of this content helpful, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button down below, and that notification bell, bing bong, to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. Help us grow as we help your orchids grow.